Technology Solutions for Ukrainian Refugees with Jeff Aresty. This is our topic for today from instantmediations.com, Lawyers and Mediators podcast.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hello and welcome. My name is Natalia Łowska-Czajka, speaking to you from Warsaw, Poland.
Hey everybody, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney mediator and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am hosting in my office Jeff Aresty, a dear guest whom we met via Instant Mediations many years ago at the beginning of the pandemic or even earlier, I bet. And it is our greatest pleasure because Jeff is with me today in Warsaw. He's made all this journey from Texas to here. That makes me really happy and proud. And this is my warmest welcome to you, Jeff, for coming all this way and coming for such a wonderful purpose that we are going to discuss today. First of all, a few words about yourself, but okay, this is also your time to say hi.
Well, it's great to be here in Warsaw. This is my first time here in Poland. This is the home where my mom grew up and then went to the United States in 1937. So it's very exciting for me to be here. The reason I'm here, though, is the founder and president of the InternetBar is to find out ways to make technology work for the justice for Ukrainian refugees. It's been a real important situation for me to address because I know that the technology of the blockchain, the technology of non-fungible tokens and all kinds of identity solutions could make a difference. And I needed to come here to meet people and see whether or not my ideas make some sense.
This is
And let me interrupt just a little bit. So I will be sharing, for those who might be listening on the podcast, check out the YouTube video where you can see some of the screen shares. We're going to be looking at justicedao.life, justicedao.life. That's the website that you had set up for your trip here for this business. And I'm screen sharing it. If you want to go discuss that a little bit, that would be greatly appreciated.
JusticeDAO.life, the DAO stands for Distributed Autonomous Organization. Those are the organizations that are going to be built on the blockchain, and within some period of time, nobody really knows whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or longer. These types of organizations are going to be replacing corporations and partnerships and all the types of organizational structures that we're familiar with, because these will be the ones operating on the blockchain. So we have set up JusticeDAO.life to invite people to join it, become community members, and then actually develop the rules for governance of how our community will function and operate as we go forward.
And thank you for that. What Jeff actually does, and it is so impressive, is he is doing his work that unites the past, the present, and the future. And the reason I'm saying that is that look how similar and how repetitive the history is. Your mom was fleeing the war from the territory close to Belarus now, from the Polish territory to the States. Now people are fleeing to Poland because they're again facing war where they are. And technology, as you mentioned, can be a solution to many of the problems they are facing. What particular solutions have you been thinking of coming over here? What tools you are thinking of that would be helpful to refugees that are currently here in Poland, but also elsewhere in Europe?
Well, one of the things that is particularly useful to start with is the fact that the Ukrainian government is way ahead of literally every government in the world with this application that they've put on everybody's phone. It's called the DIA application, and what it does is it contains many identity issues, attributes such as passports, relationship with the government in terms of tax and so forth. But what's being very interesting about it right now is that they're using it to have refugees take pictures and report war crimes. So there are two different conversations going on about this war. And so if you have people taking pictures on the ground, then that's going to be an opportunity for the government of Ukraine to refute what is being said by Russia. The particular technology that we're bringing here is self-sovereign identity, which is a new form of decentralized identity. And the blockchain portion of that identity is not on the DIA app. So last week when I was at a legal hackathon that was sponsored by the organization Wolters Kluwer, I met with the Ministry of Digital Transformation from the Ukraine, and they expressed interest in this blockchain identity, which would then allow individuals not only to be able to take control of their identity, but the technology itself that is associated with the blockchain allows you to make authentic, and there's an inability to change the pictures. That's what's happening on the Russian side. We're finding deep fake videos, and we now are actually having to figure out how to distinguish between one and the other. So the blockchain technology allows us to get to the truth. We need to figure out the way to get there. So the blockchain technology is the predominant technology that we're bringing in, and self-sovereign identity technology in particular.
So, Jeff, when you brought up deepfakes, for example, we've discovered that this war, this modern war, has become a war of information. Okay, we have disinformation from one side that's perpetually keeping its people in the dark and then trying to gaslight the rest of us about what's really going on. So, can you give some thoughts, just your overall thoughts, on how you've seen this develop when it comes to technology? We were talking off camera beforehand about how Elon Musk's Starlink satellites, for example, has made a big impact on the war on the ground. Okay, like providing Ukrainians internet access, which the Russians tried to cut off from the very, very beginning when they invaded. So, can you just give us your overall thoughts, being a person of technology yourself who's interested in this stuff, on what you see has changed and what the future might hold?
Well, one of the things that is fascinating about the satellites that Musk is providing is that if you have the cell phone and you have electricity, that you can make sure that your cell phone is powered, and in a war setting, there's no guarantee that you're going to have that. So we were fortunate enough to work with the company Bronco Power that gave us solar and hand crank uh, tools that would help Ukrainian refugees be able to keep their cell phones powered at all times. Now that with the cell phone powered, they're going to have access to the Musk satellites. At that point, the question is going to be, what are you going to do with it? And right now, there are legal organizations around the world that want to reach out and help. When I came here, Natalia explained to me a situation where, just at a personal level, she had to go to court to arrange for custody situation because it's not necessarily mothers traveling with children. It could be grandparents traveling with children. And in those circumstances, the help that somebody like myself or other folks might want to offer is not going to be available. It's not going to be of any use unless we set up almost like a virtual offer. And we've done that. And the American Bar Association groups around the world have done this before when we had asylum cases. And you just essentially did the Henry Ford type of approach of breaking up a case into multiple parts and having different law firms working on them. So at the end of the day, instead of Natalia walking into court with one file, she could walk into court with 50 or 100 files, but she would need the help. So we would be lawyers outside of Poland and Ukraine, would essentially be paralegals and operating in that kind of a setting. But at the public level, what you were talking about with me a little bit before off line was a law firm, King and Spalding. One of their attorneys reached out to me and said, there is a deep fake video that is being put out there with the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, making it sound like he wants to appease and resolve the situation with Russia, which is not what he was saying. So the e-discovery world could actually use its capabilities and technology to look at the metadata and figure out who's doing what. So there were ways for lawyers to operate both at the public level and at the private level. And it's just a question of being able to get the folks to use and understand it. The last piece that I would say is that the identity really is very important. The new form of identity is very important in two particular ways. One, with regard to family. There are, as I understand it, over 200,000 children who are missing. And this is not new. The Balkan Wars back in the 90s, there was a similar type of a situation. And lawyers and humanitarian organizations around the ground developed a way to reach out and find those children. We need to do the same thing again using different forms of technology to be able to make it more effective. And it has to happen very quickly. At the same time, uh, I just was meeting with Ukrainian refugees yesterday from Kharkiv. There's a school there in Kharkiv, which is on the northeast border of Ukraine, right next to Russia. There are 300 children that remained in Kharkiv. 200 children came to Warsaw. Teachers are in both locations. Some are learning online, some are learning face to face. So you need to be able to do online education and at the same time be able to issue certificates to these kids who are online because they were used to learning face to face. At the same time, if they're online, their parents are now having to stay at home with them. They're not able to work. So one of the things that we wanted to do with the technology was give uh, the parents the opportunity to create non-fungible tokens, basically create digital assets so they could sell pictures of stories of what's happening in Kharkiv to tell the truth of what's happening on the ground, essentially create an ebook. This was something that we were just coming up with yesterday by meeting people here and brainstorming with the teachers and their students and be able to do this in such a way that anybody anywhere could buy these digital assets so the parents could be working, the children could be going to school. And essentially, this is all happening on the blockchain. We need to get it going quickly because time matters here. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this technology.
But meeting people here, you meet people really at different levels, and your help originally was designed to actually help at the governmental level. Coming here, you met people who are actually very much affected by the tragedy because they are the refugees themselves. Tell us about your views on that. What have you seen? What have you been encountering? What people were complaining about?
Well, the stories that I heard yesterday from the Ukrainian attorneys, and I met with the two teachers who had founded the school in Kharkiv, is that it's really challenging for everybody to be able to deal on a day-to-day basis with the changes in their lives, especially since some of the children are here in Warsaw, some of the children remain in Kharkiv, and so they're having two different lived experiences. And these are kids that used to be in the same classroom with each other. Um, and in the meantime, the stories that we heard in the States were massive numbers of people, at the borders, at the train stations, all coming and just waiting in line to get Polish identity cards so that they could get some form of humanitarian assistance. So I went to the reception centers, and they're basically empty because people have already dispersed in the country. Some have left the country. Some are coming back into the country because they went to another, let's say Germany, and now they're coming back because they want to get back to Ukraine. So this situation is in flux. There isn't any one solution that you can have at a particular point in time. But what's absolutely clear is that the people who aren't working because they're traveling want to be able to get back to some sense of normalcy and work, but they have children that they're with, and the children need to learn, and the children's lives are the most important that have to be taken care of. The government people are doing everything that they can to try to facilitate, but we're 3 months into a war where you have somewhere between 300 and 500,000 refugees in Poland, and people are taking care of them, but there's not as much help today, I understand, as from the government of Poland as there was in the beginning. So things are changing and constantly in flux.
And let me correct you. There wasn't any help from government at this stage, but that was really people's open hearts. There was the help from the government at the governmental level. Maybe there was also legislature that will have, the law has been passed on special status for the Ukrainian refugees. And yes, I need to admit that was a huge help. But on the other hand, the refugee centers, the reception in our homes, that was done by ordinary people
That's
and
right.
by the local government. And that was a tremendous, tremendous effort. And there is always a question how much effort you can be constantly bringing if, for example, this change of effort is not supported somehow. That at some stage you feel like you're left alone with everything you are doing. Because, for example, here we've been offered help, also financial support for keeping upkeeping for having the refugees over their homes, but unfortunately that does not work that efficiently as we would expect. So people are actually not receiving this money. Fortunately, the help that has been granted to the Ukrainian people, this original 300 zlotys they were getting, which was like about $80, that was actually quite fluently done. And the thing that the refugee centers or the reception centers are now empty. I think that the first wave of people who was to who were to escape, has reached the places of destination. Things were fortunately sorted for them quite quickly. So they got their registration numbers, they got their bank accounts, they're registered for some help. What I need to also add is that they are also getting the United Nations refugee help, which also helps them. This is a monthly installment for 3 months. I know that's been of help for many of them. But yes, there is a moment where plenty of them will be deciding what they will do, whether they'll stay or go home, even if the war is still pending. We are all people. I need to tell you from my personal experience with the people who live with me under my roof that they simply miss their ordinary life. They miss their premises, they miss their friends who stay there. They're absolutely tired by the uncertainty, by the everyday life in a foreign country with a foreign language. So, no matter how friendly people are, it's very, very stressful for them, especially for the kids. And one thing about the schooling, quite a lot of Ukrainian children came physically to Polish schools and they're also getting Polish certificates. So one of the issues for the future will be how to recognize and comply Polish system of education with Ukrainian one to combine a coherent system for those people. I bet I had about an estimation that 90,000 of school children in Warsaw alone have been schooled within 3 weeks after they came here. That left them with like 2 months of schooling before they get the certificate. So many challenges for them. Not speaking Polish, of course, and this is a different language to Ukrainian. So there is so much to be said. Some is happening in the real life, and some needs to be recognized by the technology. So, what do you think the desired outcome of your stay here, of the cooperation you are going to set up, should be?
Certainly, the need for some harmonization, some way in which people who are in between two systems are going to be able to see a clear future. If they have to wait for the changes in the government to be made, governments have a difficult time just reaching agreements with each other about what they're going to do for their own citizens, let alone in a war setting. In the meantime, that hasn't stopped the presidents of Ukraine and Russia from being able to operate on a harmonized basis, buying and selling military equipment with virtual currency all around the world. They are operating on the blockchain with hundreds of millions of dollars in the background, and there is no problem with that. What it has demonstrated is that there are a whole level of IT specialists in Poland and Ukraine that are world-class professionals. In fact, one of the companies that we heard about in the United States, we all have heard about them in the e-discovery field. Relativity is a very large organization, has set up an office in Krakow. I just found this out in the last week, working with the attorneys at King and Spalding. Well, they're here because there's expertise here. And if there's expertise here, some of that expertise could be sold on the blockchain. So then instead of just operating at the public level, you could work at the private level as well. Why can't people operate at the private level? That was why we came up with the idea of this non-fungible tokens. I know that we want to hear the stories of what's going on the ground. We want truth to be told. There's a virtual marketplace for military arms and supplies. Why can't there be a virtual marketplace for digital assets and goods that are being sold by people who are here on the ground? And certainly the kids are capable of doing that. So a desired outcome for me would be to see how we could help show the world that at this point, it's 10 to 12 million. I don't know the exact number of displaced people and refugees from Ukraine. They could show the world how to take the last mile to the next internet. That's really the important thing for me to mention, is that we're operating, all of us, on an old internet. It's broken. It's not working. The next internet is being developed right now. And the Ukrainian people and the Polish people could literally lead the last mile and get there by starting to sell digital assets and so forth. So we're working on that. Again, I'm here, though, to listen, to learn, and find out how we can work. So I have an idea, but maybe it'll be different by the time I leave.
Yeah, and Jeff, so as we start wrapping up, screen sharing one last time. Again, we appreciate the information. The justice DL justice.life. That is one place people can go to contact you and how they can help. Okay.
That's right.
And now it's part of the InternetBar.org, which I also have up. And of course, all of the work you guys have been doing for years, it was with Peace Tones or Be One World or The Invisibles, all that connects to what you guys are trying to drive now as in terms of change, correct?
That's exactly right. We want to work with youth. We want to give them the opportunity to use technology so that they can make justice work for them, whether it's through music, whether it's through taking their skills as IT professionals, whether it's just communicating and finally family members. The technology can work for justice. And the way we have to figure it out is by coming to the places which matter. So in all of our work, we always go to the countries, find partners on the ground, because the partners we find here are the ones that are going to tell us what to do. We can only bring resources, share them, and then learn from the people here what's the best way to use them.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We're going out of time. So let's connect back soon. Okay, Jeff, it's good to see you again. Natalia, as always.
It's
Thank
lovely
you.
to have you, Jeff, in Warsaw, and this is a great, absolutely fascinating topic here. And I really hope for the best, and I wish you all the best with the project.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
All right, guys.